Hello, hello. Good morning. Happy Friday. Coach Tyler here with a long-standing client, Erin Vandenberg. Erin and I have been working together for 16, 17 months. We started in like November, December of 2023. So there's been a lot of life changes on both ends for both of us. There's been a lot of wins, a lot of hardships, in the fitness and the training and the physical health side of things. And we're going to kind of dig into all of that today. So, Erin, first question. I kind of briefed you a little bit here. First question, tell the listeners a little bit about, yourself and your background before we started working together.
Yeah. So I do not come from a background of being an athlete or fitness or sports or anything like that. I didn't do any of that in high school. I didn't do any of that in college. But somewhere in my early 20s, uh, which when I think about it, my mom was probably the same age I am now, but she said to me, um, you really should make fitness a part of your life now because it's so much harder when you're older.
Mm.
So I suspect that she was trying to start her fitness journey at like 45,
Which is
40,
tough.
47, which is tough. So I think she was realizing like, I better tell my daughter to make this part of her life now.
Mm.
And I listened, I took it to heart. And so I went to a local gym, got a trainer, did some stuff, right? Then I sort of did my own thing. It was all basically like machine weight stuff. And then I had some online friends who had started to get into running. And I looked at them and I was like, well, if they can run a 5K, I can totally run a 5K. Like, why are they better than me, right?
Of course,
So
of course.
I did. I joined a running group and started training for my first 5K and got super hooked into running in my early 20s. And that was basically what I did. It really helped me when I moved from central Illinois up to the Chicago area, up to Chicago. It helped me make friends, it helped me find community, all of that. And then in 2020 or 2010, sorry, 2010, I ran my first marathon and then got like super into like running, like hardcore running, like races every weekend, all this stuff. And
Classic.
yeah, classic, right? Like totally overdo it. And then I started having hip pain, and a bunch of different doctors were like, well, it might be a labral tear, it might be, hip impingement, it might be all this stuff. We think you're going to need surgery, all of this. And I was like, I don't love that.
Mm.
Um, and so I backed off the running, and then there was a woman at my office where I was working at the time. And I was just like, she looks really you know, like she looks really buff and strong and like hardcore. And I was like, so I asked her, I was like, what do you do? And she goes, well, I go to the gym in the building. We had a gym in our office building.
That's nice.
I go to the gym in the building. And, she's like, I follow this plan, whatever. But I was like, okay, I think I want a trainer though. And I got my first trainer there was she. She actually is now a soccer coach at a university in Colorado.
Oh,
She used to play for what's the women's team in Chicago? The Red Stars, I think.
I'm not sure. That is
Yeah.
not my forte.
Yeah, I'm not really a soccer person either. But anyway, so I'm like, oh, I knew her when. Anyway, um, she was my first like trainer and it was fine. We did a lot of like stuff that you'd have soccer players do, right? And then she left and I got another trainer and he was the first person who ever really taught me how to use a barbell.
Mm.
Loved him. He was amazing. Got really strong, PR'd all my lifts, right? This is like in 2013, 14-ish. Then he left and I got another trainer and she was fine. She had a little bit more of a CrossFit background. Um, And then she would write me, even though I only trained with her once a week, she would write me programs. She would write me a workout 4 days a week. And so a lot of times I was doing them on my own, and I was doing safety bar squats. By the way, all of the strength training totally solved my hip issue.
You don't
No
say.
more hip issue.
It's funny how that works. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's funny. I think a pause for a second, especially like the running community. And I consider myself a runner as well, but it's like running is this healthy thing and it becomes such a love for people that they almost put themselves in a hole because they love running so much, they want to run so much, they don't have time to do anything else. And then they forget like normal physiology and how it works. It's like you're pounding the ground, and then dabbled with and continue to dabble with going uphill and downhill. It's like your body has to be able to handle that. But yeah,
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah. So then I was like, well, I can't quit this. Also, this like, at some point I felt like I had like peaked at like how good I was gonna get running wise.
Mm.
Um, and just like, I don't know, I just don't have the genetics to be super fast runner, so fine. Um, anyway, but then I was doing, so this was, I want to say like 2017. I was doing safety bar squats on my own, written, the plan written by my trainer, and my back just went absolutely not. Like
Mm.
I felt it go. And in my head, I'm like, oh, okay, I'll walk around for a minute. I'll, you know, chill, all the stuff, right? And then I tried to keep doing my workout and I was like, this is dumb.
Uh, uh,
But you've mentioned to me before that like people who really get into this, like it becomes part of their personality, like quitting a workout early or it like we're like, no,
yeah,
but
it's
it says I do this.
unfathomable. Yeah, right.
And so that was really hard for me to just like walk away from the gym and go home.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I'll take, some a leave and I'll, stretch, I'll do all the things, right? And then I was like, okay, the next day I was like, okay, it feels a little better. And so then I was vacuuming that day, the next day, vacuuming, and I went to push the vacuum forward. And that's the first, like, when people say my back went out, I was like, oh, I know what you mean now.
Yeah, vacuuming. It's a core memory for you now. There's there's something unforgettable about the moment when you feel something happen, you're not sure what happened, but somehow you know that if you move, a certain way, you're gonna make it worse. And then you're like, okay, I guess I'm gonna crawl to the couch or whatever it is. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And so they don't let you get an MRI until you do PT, right?
Mhm.
So did PT again, right? Like again, as we've kind of discussed, right? A lot of times you go, I mean, the PT's office was in the gym, but they all have you do the same thing, the same like 12 things over and over again. And I didn't have anybody to be like, okay, so how do we ease you back into squatting and deadlifting
Right.
and doing all those things that you want to do? And ever since then, it's been a roller coaster, right? I'll have periods where it feels really good, and then I'll have periods where I'll be like, everything is frustrating and I hate this and I need to find something else to do. So like I did a
Yeah.
true like Spartan race. It was a Spartan stadium race, so it was
Yeah.
in Wrigley Field,
That's
which was
cool.
super fun. Um, so like I did something different because I'm like squats feel like trash, deadlifts feel like trash. I'm not as strong as I was. I just keep comparing myself to myself. And, I went through a series and then 2020 happened and like, you know, no one's going to the gym. So I had a little gym in my house. I had barbell, I had,
Yeah, good little setup.
yeah, I had a good setup. And so like I had an online trainer, but like squats and deadlifts just never felt the same. And even, bench press
Yeah.
would make my back hurt, right? Because
People
of
forget about that. Yeah.
the arch, right? And
I couldn't bench for like 2 years because of it.
yeah. And I went, again, I'm like, all right. And so then once in like 2022, so then I'm like, okay, I'll go back to PT for my back because it's just aggravated again. And I'm like, hurts to bench press. And she's like, why? I'm like, well, because I have to arch my back.
Oh
And she's
yeah.
like, then don't arch your back.
Yeah, but that's not how this works.
Um, I will say to give her some credit, the typical when you're L4, L5, S1 area hurts, right? And they think it's sciatica and they're like, oh, do press ups. And I'm like, if I do a press up, I will be stuck in this position in so much pain.
Mm, yeah.
And she's like, oh, what is this? Flexion, extension,
Yeah,
flexion?
extension intolerant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, that's weird. You're like the first person I've ever had like that. Like, excellent.
Yeah.
Great. Thank
It's
you.
it's interesting, there is a tendency for people with disc injuries to be flexion intolerant and respond well to extension. The problem becomes when it's chronic, right? Just long term. You develop enough thickness and enough inflammation and honestly just enough um like neural sensitivity that like anything that exceeds neutral becomes sensitive. You know, we can call it a 7 year, 6 year kind of journey dealing with this. Follows a pretty classic timeline, not to downplay on the
Oh,
uniqueness of your journey, but I think a lot of folks like yourself deal with a similar thing, right? Now we can both agree you are an athlete, right? Maybe 15 years ago that wasn't you, but it is now. You were a hybrid athlete before hybrid athlete was cool. You were lifting and running.
yep. Which used to
20
confuse the heck out of the trainers at the gym, by the
Yeah,
way.
it's like I do both, and I want to keep doing both.
Yeah.
Um, but this confusion around the trainers is the same thing that happens on both ends of like the rehab training spectrum. It's like you're going to be really good at helping me get largely pain-free day to day rehab. It's like, okay, but now I need to know how to take this and get back to benching.
Mhm.
And this is not shade. I'm not throwing shade. It's just like traditionally most clinicians are like, go see a trainer. I don't know what to do there. And then you see a trainer and they're like, all right, we're going to help you bench. But that approach isn't taken into consideration the things that you have in your history or that you're still kind of overcoming, and people kind of get stuck. And then when you get stuck, you're like, well, let me try this again. All right, now let me try this again. And we just get stuck. I've lately been calling it the pain loop. We could maybe just call it like the pain roller coaster because it goes up and down. But I didn't even, I guess until now, really know the depth of as much as you had gone through. I knew it was quite a while. I knew that you had some success with traditional rehab. You had some success getting back to normal with regular training, but never 100% there and kind of bouncing it out. Leading up to right before you and I started, um, like what were the major challenges or hardships you were facing, right? Like where were you at? What were you seeking? And tell me a little bit about ultimately what made you decide to have us work together.
So I had been doing a hybrid program, and then I was supposed to run the Chicago Marathon in 2020. Clearly, that didn't happen. So they let you defer, and 2023 was the last year I could use my deferral.
Hmm.
And I was like, yes, I could just throw away the $275 or whatever the entry fee it was in 2020. Um,
But the athlete was like, no,
yeah, but the other thing was like, no, doesn't have to be your fastest one. Just go enjoy it,
do
right?
it. Yeah.
Whatever. But what I realized is that and again, right, for many reasons, right, I was not in a position where I could, hello, thank you for joining me. I was not in
Welcome
a
to the call.
position where I could run and lift at that level And I
Mm.
had just been really frustrated with my lifting for a long time, because it was very traditional, right? Like do the squats, do the deadlifts, do the bench press, right? Just really, really traditional like that. And it was just so frustrating. And I'm like, my running isn't great right now. My lifting isn't great right now. I can't do a two a day anymore because my back hurts.
Yeah,
It was just, and I was just so frustrated again, because, you're comparing yourself to yourself, right? What you used to be able to do, a little bit to stuff you see online, but also yourself.
sure.
And I was like, what I really need is a PT who knows about lifting.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, look, here's one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, tell me like what, I kind of want to double click on that because I think people understand the answer, but I want to hear it from your perspective. What made you feel like you needed a PT who understood lifting? What was the perceived benefit there?
So because I'd had personal trainers and because I've worked with quite a few physical therapists. Again, like what you said earlier, right? It's like the physical therapist knows how to get you out of the pain, but the
Sure.
trainer doesn't know how to keep you out of that pain once you go back. And they
Mm.
don't really know if you say, well, deadlifts hurt my back, right? A lot of them don't really know what to do with that piece of information.
Other than maybe just not deadlift,
Yeah, other than just not deadlift.
which is fine until it's not the thing until you want a deadlift, which
Right.
you're like, no, I want to pick up heavy shit.
Right. Exactly. Or even like, I had, again, I had that one trainer who had a background in CrossFit. And what's the thing where you clean the bar, like an overhead clean?
A snatch?
Yeah. She tried to have me do one of those one time, and I was like, oh no.
Oh no.
I'm like,
Global flexion to global extension? I'm not sure.
yeah. And I like did one, and I was like, nope, that's not happening again. Like, even doing just a barbell clean to get the barbell back up on
The
the
rack.
J hooks or
Yeah.
whatever. Sometimes, like, I'm like, oh, that just I'm not using my glutes at all. Like, this is great. Um, So like I had a really hard time translating the things I knew from PT into the actual lifting. So I'm like, I need somebody who can marry the two so that I can move
Mm.
the this like canyon.
Yeah. Kind of build a little bit of a bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, transparently, right? Admittedly, I recognize that I am, as a coach slash physio, I'm kind of in a lucky spot where I work with people after they've tried all these things. So in a way, we are dealing with a lot of complex and chaos because it's like, well, what worked, what didn't? Like now you're 7 years into dealing with discomfort. So that makes it difficult. At the same time, we can be like, oh no, I tried this already. Oh, I've tried this already. And like I have all this data to work with. So in a way, like it's lucky, but you had to go through 7 years of life before we got there. So it's not really that lucky. Think back to when we first started, right? So tail end of 2023, beginning of 2024. Um, what, if you can remember, right? What was the initial, plan or framework that we put into place to help you start achieving your goals and really move beyond this pain from being a major distraction to your training and your adventures in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I do remember that I told you, I'm like, I just want to get back to feeling like myself. Like I want to be able to walk into a workout and not stare at it with apprehension,
Mm.
right? I also wanted to be able to, you know, deadlift a lot again.
Yeah,
And,
I love.
transparently, I still can't, but I'm in a better place, better mindset place there. Um, and I really just didn't want to like, I think I remember saying like, I don't understand how to do progressive overload when you get to a point and then you're like, I'll add 5 pounds. Nope, that hurt. Okay, well now I'm stuck at this. And I like couldn't get there. So I know that we did a lot of, and again, this is something that I think like a lot of times when you just go to a regular trainer, they don't, and you're like, I want to be able to deadlift, but it hurts. And they're like, okay, so just deadlift less. Wait,
Yeah. Yeah.
no,
Yeah. Right.
we have to work on all the patterns first. So I know that you had me work on all the patterns first, which at times was very frustrating because I'm
Very.
like, not because I was like, where's the barbell? Why am I not using a barbell? But just more of like, oh, I have to retrain stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember, when some of our initial conversations, like I'm pretty big on goals when we start, and it's a very frustrating time because folks are like, well, I have these objective goals, but we tell ourselves a story that it's wrong to have a goal of deadlifting X weight again after I've been in pain for 5 years. Like I'm past that. Like that's not valuable anymore. But sometimes having very performancey goals does help to create the more realistic rehab goals that need to come first. And for a long time you did, and I'm sure it's still in there a little bit, had this goal of, I think it was like 200 pounds or 135 pounds of a deadlift. And then we have this extra frustrating layer of like, okay, I finally found a person who I think can bridge the gap, but now he's got me doing kettlebell good mornings, and this is boring, and this doesn't feel like lifting, and I thought this was going to be the thing. So yeah, I remember we pulled it back in terms of complexity, and we just tried to get your body exposed to squatting and hinging and lunging at a higher frequency without having these big like 3 day blow ups, right? Or the rest of the day you're not feeling good. And for sure, so people understand how it really works, there was times when we were causing the same discomfort, right? Or we were like bringing the same issues to the surface, but that is to some degree an inevitable part of the process because it's really just informed trial and error. You have
Mhm.
the data that you experienced over the last 5 to 7 years. I have my experience with other folks and patterns that I recognize, and like my degree. So we put those together to deal with the issues better. It's not that we prevent the issues from happening. You can probably tell the folks plenty of stories about, there was hardship, there was struggle, there was lots of frustration, on both ends. And that's one of the bigger reasons I wanted to bring you on, is not just because we're doing cool stuff now. Your mindset has grown in a beautiful way. You have a lot more confidence and control in your body, but also because of like the real life shit that we had to go through in a training. Also, by the way, you were dealing with actual real life stuff and
Yeah.
like, you know, classic hardships in life that amplify pain, that distract you from being able to train consistently. And through all of that, you've done pretty darn good. So I don't mean that as a frame to help push you to say certain things right now. I'm curious, like, now that people know your story, they know how we started working together. What has it been like, lately, right? And talk about it all. What type of progress have you made recently, and what type of results have you noticed lately?
Um, I was just thinking about like one of the very first things you ever had me do were like, I don't know, it was like anchor the band, put it around your hips and like do hinges.
It's
And
like
I'm
a
like,
standing hip thrust. Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, this is weird. I don't like this.
I'm humping the
I don't like
air.
it. Weird. And it's just weird.
Yeah.
Um,
You and everyone else hates that exercise. Yeah.
so, but it's a standard for a reason.
Yeah.
Um, so, I mentioned like, yes, I would love to be able to rep 135 at minimum on a deadlift again, right? Just because, putting 45s on the bars, it, first of all, it looks cool, but also like
Yeah, that is like the classic,
yeah.
benchmark. Yeah.
Um, but I think, and so I'm not there, right? And so that's very frustrating. It's still very frustrating to have a day where you deadlift or squat or do whatever and it hurts. And it like that, it still happens. It sucks.
Me too.
I think honestly the biggest thing that I've learned though is don't catastrophize, right?
Mm,
Don't be like, I'm never gonna deadlift again. This is dumb. I hate this. I'm a failure. This is the worst. Um, I mean, I even remember, I think it was like in January even of this year, maybe. So my Christmas, it was either my Christmas or my birthday gift for my husband were 10 pound bumper plates, which are like,
the real size.
yeah,
Yeah.
the real size bumper plates, which are like so sad when you put them on the bar because they like don't quite stand up. Like, I
Oh
don't know.
yeah.
Yeah, they want to be like this or like the bottom's all bent in. It's
Yeah,
fine.
like a comedy
Fine.
show. Yeah.
Do what you gotta do. Do what you gotta do. But I remember he got them for me and I was so excited to do my first workout with them. And my back was like, absolutely not
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
And I was so like I cried. I was so sad. And then the next day I was like, we're just gonna try. We're gonna warm up. We're gonna walk on the treadmill. We're not gonna
Exactly.
go from sitting on the couch to lifting immediately, right? Like we gotta ease
Yeah.
into this. And it was great. I did my whole workout. I was just gonna, do some reps on, some deadlift reps, but then I did my whole workout because I was like, oh, I feel really good. And, even I was thinking about it like even last week when I was like, these deadlifts felt like trash. I went
Yep.
up to 80 and I shouldn't have gone up to 80 and this was blah. And you're like, Erin, you've done 80.
Yeah.
Just
Like 3 weeks
take
in a
your
row. Yeah.
just take your time. And then this week they were great. So
I was actually confused when I looked back at the data. I was like,
I've done
Am,
80.
is this showing up wrong? Like what is because you were like, I shouldn't have made that jump. And I'm like, it's a 5 pound jump. And granted, 5 out of 80, that's not just 2%, but um yeah, there's two things I want to highlight because I think someone who's listening, it might be easy to coast by, especially when you haven't done this type of work yet, right? First of all, not catastrophizing when stuff goes wrong. It's a natural reaction. And you still do it. I still do it. I have a doctorate degree in effectively pain, and I still catastrophize sometimes. But going through a journey like this, that's one of the biggest skills you develop is learning how to move through that few days, few weeks, whatever it is, without catastrophizing. Because when we get stressed and anxious and when we listen to our fears, it amplifies what we feel. I don't think people realize or recognize the fact that like emotions amplify pain sensitivity. Even if there is literally nothing wrong with the tissues, you've developed sensitivity to hinging. And when you fear that pain, you make the pain worse, right? The other thing that is kind of hidden in there is the next day. I think it was the next day, 2 days later, you went into the gym and you didn't ignore the discomfort, but you kind of didn't let it control you. You tried also some different kind of prep techniques. One of the biggest one was walking on the treadmill and getting warm. And people might be like, "Oh, of course, you warmed up before you train." It's like we do pretty meaty warm-ups. Get the glutes, get the core, whatever. But you had to experience a very organized framework from me. You had to experience, our conversations together, working through problem solving so that 8 months later, 12 months later, you could face a problem and figure it out on your own. This is what it means to move beyond your pain, right? Beyond the pain means it's still over there. It's just not part of your vision. It's not part of your life. And when you were like, I still have frustrating days, like I still do too. I went into the gym yesterday. It was an aerobic session. I decided I wanted a kettlebell swing with my rowing, and my back was like, not today, buddy. And like, I haven't had pain in 2 years, but there's times when my back's like, I don't love this, but nowadays it's just kind of like, all right, I'll listen to you. I'll do a little extra tonight, a little extra tomorrow, and we'll probably be back at it. So what has changed about your abilities and your fitness and your performance since a year and a half ago? What are you doing now that you couldn't do before?
Um, I can, well, one is I'm much better at noticing why
Mm,
something didn't feel great. I mean, even yesterday I was doing kickstand vertical cleans and the first like set, I was like, "Ooh, that didn't feel as good today." And I went, "Oh, Erin, it's because you're like leaned over.
mm,
You're not as vertical as you should, like as you could, like you need to be." I
yeah,
don't like I could like tell. I was like, "Oh, I see what's happening."
yeah.
And I adjusted it and then it was fine. Um, I can more times than not, I can deadlift and not be in pain for 48 hours.
Hmm.
Where it used to be, I'd be like, well, today's deadlift day, so
Not doing anything tomorrow.
not doing anything tomorrow. Definitely not going for a run. Um, and honestly, like, I think I told you, like, I mean, honestly, it's this current round is the first time in a long time that I've been able to look at a workout and be like, oh yeah, I got that. I got it. I got it. Right.
Mm,
I don't look at stuff and go, hmm, right. I don't know how I'm going to feel about that. Um, and even just generally hinging, right? RDLs.
those are
I,
clear.
yeah, I feel so much better with those. Like I actually know how to use my glutes, not my back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, are you deadlifting 135 pounds now? Slash, yeah. No. Are you deadlifting pain-free 100% of the time? No. But can you clean and swing a kettlebell at like max effort speed? Can you do RDLs and deadlifts in the same week and still live your life? Can you squat to the point of like holding your breath red in the face type of effort and type of weight, relatively speaking? Yes. Have we seen you deadlift in the 4 to 5 rep range to a point where your back starts to round because it's heavy enough? Yes. And I think people get so caught up in the weight, they forget just about working hard, right? I think you're in a place now where more times than not, you can push your body to a place of technical failure and soreness without having the tradition, like what it was traditional for you was like the associated pain and fear and waking up the next morning looking
Mhm.
for the Tylenol, you know? And that to me, like, do I want to get you to 135? Heck yeah, of course. But like, does this place, pushing your body to its limits, working really hard, being able to do something multiple times a week without having a massive issue, to me, that speaks more to like, living a good life,
Mhm.
movement health first, and now we can continue to push into the performance realm. I think people forget that if you've been on a pain journey for 2+ years, you can expect 2+ years of trying to get out of it, right? Like you and I are now 16, 17 months later at the point where we're starting to shift our mindset from like navigate pain to prioritize performance while we acknowledge your limitations. That took a year and a half.
Mhm.
With all of your knowledge of your own history, of all of my experience, it still took a year and a half, right? So does that like, you know, give us an excuse? No, but I do think maybe someone listening will be like, oh, I'm actually not that bad of a place right now, 8 months in and still dealing with shit because like I have time. Statistics tell me that it's going to take more time. So
I,
I do have two questions. If
yeah.
we get to both of them, great. If we don't, and we kind of answer all together, that's cool too. What has worked for you? Now, that can be movements, mindset, whatever. You can just go wherever you want. Like, what are some lessons that you can share with the listeners that you've learned along the way?
One, you don't ha have to back squat. That doesn't define you as a human.
Mm, yes. To be an athlete, to be a
Be an
weightlifter,
athlete, yeah, to be an athlete, to lift
valuable.
weights, to use a barbell, you don't have to back squat. There are many other things you can do. Um, I mean, along that line, right? Like if doing that is not your goal, right? You can substitute that for something that doesn't make you, no matter what Instagram or the internet tells you, that doesn't make you less of an athlete or less of a gym rat or less of a whatever if you're doing goblet
Cheers to
squats.
that. Cheers to that.
Um, um, that I learned I really like single leg work, right? I mean, I'm not necessarily at a point where I can't like I'm still working on the, balance core piece. So like I really like the kickstand stuff, right? But that really works for me and I for whatever reason. Um and also, like I said, I think that one of the things that I was really struggling with was like, what does progressive overload look like when you feel like you get to a point and then you blow it up and then, right? So just being able to say, say like this, I don't like, I tried to go up and wait and it didn't work. And then for you to say either like, well, you've done that before, so like try it again, but slow down, take a breath, right? Or be like, okay, so let's keep the weight the same as last week, but let's do more reps or let's add a tempo or, right? It's not about just going up in weight.
Mm,
There's other things, right? And so hearing that, and I'm sure you've had to tell it to me 100 times at this point, but just
yeah.
right.
Yeah, there's other ways to feel like you're progressing. There's other ways to force improvements in fitness. And there's other ways to feel strong and feel athletic outside of what tradition or convention tells us. I think we innocently, the industry convinces us that there's these certain things that represent quality fitness and quality performance, and that's a big hurdle. That's a very real thing that we work on a lot. I work on with a lot of folks is like sometimes part of the healing process is, fixing your stability or mobility. Sometimes part of the healing process is like reminding you or helping you understand the other options. It's not giving up, it's not avoiding, it's just like honoring what your body wants. So, last question I'll leave you with here. What advice would you give to someone who is, facing the same challenges or in a similar place to where you were um, 16, 17 months ago when we started?
It is so true that it takes what seems like an obscene amount of time and that what you see online is people going from I was, everything hurt and I was dying to now I'm better. And it's like, but you don't know truly what happened behind that, right? You don't know their story compared to yours. Um, and yes, it's 100% fine to have goals, ambitious goals even, but the patience that you have to have is so much more than you might have thought it was.
Mm,
And I mean, I know Tyler, you've written about this before, right? It's like you get to a point you're like, I feel great, and then you immediately go back to what you did right before you got injured, and then you blow it all up again. And it's like you have to have that patience, as annoying as it might feel at the moment.
yeah. Yeah, it's like, how about we just feel great for a couple weeks before we test the greatness?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Patience. All right, that's your
Yeah.
that's your big advice is like keep that patience, learn how to develop that patience. I would agree. It's a big piece of it. It takes a while. So, Erin, thank you for taking some time out of your Friday morning to tell your story thank you for, of course, for trusting me, for trusting the process. Um, as long as we continue to do this, I'm going to be excited to stand next to you on this journey. I know there's always more work to do. Sometimes we're okay with leaving some work to do on the table, but I know we've got some missions left to accomplish before we're done. But I was glad to be able to capture the progress and the story. So thank you, folks. Thanks for watching and listening. Everyone have a great day.